Namaste, and welcome to the fifth session of these meditation instructions we have been doing. So for today, I am going to be talking more about how to work with our mind in meditation. As you might have noticed, we are getting more subtler and subtler on how we use all these body-mind instruments. We started with the body in the first and the second session, and then I talked a little bit about working with body sensations and energy in the second session. And yesterday I spoke about how to use pranayama and breath. And today we're going to talk about how to work directly with the mind in meditation. And hopefully tomorrow we will talk about the intellect and contemplation, how to work with that. So there are a couple of points that I want to clarify in the beginning. In one of my first introduction about this, I mentioned the importance of both paths or two paths that people feel aligned with. Some people are more inclined or attuned with a more intellectual and a contemplative kind of approach. Some of the people are more devotionally tuned, more energetically attuned. So, when we talk about the mind, it might seem that those people who are more intellectually attuned would actually be more prone or more capable to work with that. But that is not so. And I will actually try and demonstrate that how each person can, according to their own nature, can work with that. But of course, it's always helpful to take also some guidance from someone on what is most suitable for you. So, having said that, I'm going to try to explain one of the key factors here on working with the mind. And for this, I'm going to use a little small illustration. And this is a rock, and I picked it up from the Ganga today when I went for my regular meditation there. As you can imagine, this rock is kind of quite heavy. It is so it is not just like a small rock. It is quite heavy, and it's got a nice shape. So when we work with the meditation, there are two approaches, or rather, when we generally use our mind to focus on anything, there are two approaches, right? And I want to illustrate this using this rock. Our attention can actually be continuously focused on something, as when we work, when we do some job, or when we even carry out some functions, we try to completely focus our attention on something, right? Now that might work when you're interested in something, or you have an obligation to do that. And then also, because it's externally focused, you might actually get some immediate rewards by trying to continuously focus on that. But the outcome of that is usually, as we know, that it exhausts the senses. And that is why today we see a lot of cases of stress management and people going through a lot of stress when they overwork or overfocus on something. And even though you might be interested, like in watching a movie, like you can watch the movie for like 3 hours or something without a break sometimes. It doesn't mean that you're going to be relaxed, because your senses get exhausted. Meditation is a little different in this, because it is not so much an outward using of the senses. Here you are actually kind of connecting within. You are relaxing a little bit more. And so the outcome of meditation should have some element of peace, bliss, if not that, at least a kind of sense of inner connection, where we rest the senses and connect to the deeper aspect of the mind. And this actually should energize the mind and the senses in a more subtler way. So the way we can understand this is, again, coming back to this rock. Now, if I want to hold this rock, there are two ways. One is I'm kind of grasping it, I'm holding it, I'm kind of making sure that it doesn't fall and it doesn't hurt my feet, right? So I'm kind of having to hold that rock. I'm having to grasp on to this rock. But the result of this is, although I'm able to accomplish this, my hands are getting strained. I'm getting a little exhausted by this, by trying to hold this attention this way. So another way to do this is actually, instead of trying to grasp and hold on to this using my strength and energy, because I'm already feeling the pain in my arms right now, I would rather try to hold it like this, where I'm just giving that rock enough support, and I'm ensuring that the rock has a good base to lie on, and all that I'm doing is just supporting it. So the amount of energy required is really minimal. And compared to that other approach of grasping, where I had to make sure that it doesn't fall off, and also the way I'm holding it, it's taking, it is using all my hands. And this is actually traditionally used to explain how we are using our senses, all our five senses, to hold on to things, to grasp onto things. And that is actually straining. But instead, if we just allow the mind to just hold it naturally without having to focus and engage our senses so much, then the rock rests naturally. And yet we are accomplishing that purpose, right? So this in effect is the attitude rather we take towards meditation. Our meditation should not become like a stressful activity. But yet it doesn't mean that we are not applying any force or that we're not applying any attention. We are maintaining attention, but it is like working with it. It's supporting that object that we're working with. Now, I'm going to use one more illustration here, but just to give you the first example on how we are going to try and experiment about this in a few minutes is, yesterday I spoke about the breath meditation. And if you notice that I told you just watch the breathing, let the breathing happen by itself, right? There were two areas where we can actually switch to this resting mode. And one is, at some point, if you feel like you're not able to focus or you're getting lost with the breath, you just allow yourself to rest. And like, towards the last, I said, just break and rest, what I call as rest with awareness or rest in awareness. Now, what happens with this is you just allow yourself to rest after practicing watching the breath for a few seconds. And as you rest, you're not fighting your senses. You're not kind of trying to shut off your senses. Let your thoughts come. Let the sounds that come have to come. Let any smell from the kitchen waft through your senses. You become aware and acknowledge it. But when you're resting with awareness, the difference is you're aware and that you don't get carried away by that. In other words, you acknowledge it, but you don't get carried away by that. Now, this resting is also possible in the breath meditation in two ways. One has at the end of it. The other way is in between the breaths, there is a small sense of gap. And what happens when we bring our attention to this gap is this conceptual thinking mind, which we are so dependent on, which has to label things, which has to focus on things, temporarily comes to a rest. And at this point, we are actually able to connect again back to our inner self, where we get recharged. It is almost like our deep sleep. When we go to deep sleep, we are actually recharging our batteries, right? And imagine like if somebody cannot get sleep at all, because the next day they will be all jittery and restless. So the same thing, when we focus on something, we want to use the power of attention, but yet we want to give it enough space so that it can kind of rest and recollect and then come back again to that focus. So the same thing, I'm going to experiment one last thing before we actually practice. This we're going to experiment, show you this with what is called as using the japa. This is a mala, and so some people might be familiar with chanting the mantras on the malas. I think you can also, I think it's called nam japa in some traditions too, maybe. So whatever it is that you can use, you don't necessarily have to use a mala, but I'm just showing this as an as an illustration. If I were to just chant a simple mantra like Om, right? I can start chanting Om, 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 and then kind of finish off the job of chanting using the whole mala. But in this whole process, I have not really connected to the deeper peace or to a deeper inner state of consciousness, right? I'll give you an experiment. What I mean by that, if I were to, instead of chanting Om, 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 right, I would just kind of chant Om, give a pause, Om, and in this pause, I feel connection with that silence. Because the other thing is a verbal activity of japa, right? Of repeating the mantra. So chant Om, and then it's almost like a devotional approach for those who are devotionally attuned, is to allow that God to reply back to you because you are saying something, right? So Om, and then you give that pause, and in that you try to connect to that inner peace, and then you can continue again. So it doesn't have to again become in a methodical thing and say, okay, I say Om and then 2 seconds I'll give gap. That defeats the purpose. You have to kind of make that effort to chant that mantra and then give a little gap. Anyway, this is just a tip, and you can actually experiment on this on your own. So for today's guided meditation, I would like to again use the breath. So let us just start first with the procedure that I've taught in the other things. You can take a moment just to establish an intention, a purpose for your meditation. And then we will actually do the 3 breaths and energize the body together. And so then we will just continue directly to the meditation. We won't do that exhalation breath for today. So just take a moment to connect to the purpose that you want to establish for your meditation. You can kind of mentally give a purpose on how you want to be a better person, or how you want to use this meditation to for yourself, maybe your family, your friends, and or just not just to be a better person in that world. So any intention, you can just take a moment, internalize it, and also, if you like, say a short prayer to invoke blessings. And now, take a deep breath, tense your whole body, feel that energy everywhere in your body, and then quickly relax. Let go, feel the relaxation. Tense your whole body, feel that energy vibrating all through your body. You can quickly relax. Let go. One last time, inhale, tense, hold that tension, and quickly relax and let go. Again, here, feel that rest, not just physically, you can connect to that rest mentally. Just open up, be aware, and just rest without fighting any thoughts, fighting any external sounds or other sensory inputs that you might be getting. Now, when you're ready, you can just start observing the breath. So I will, in between, say that I will drop my arms. At that point, we will open our eyes and we will rest in awareness, just in a few seconds, opening up to whatever inputs you might be getting, but stay with awareness that you don't get carried away. So it helps to open your eyes at that point. So let us close our eyes now, and you can position your eyes either down or upwards. And then watch the incoming breath. Let the breath come in by itself. Let the breath go by itself. Initially, just become aware of breathing. No need to specifically look for the gap. Just become aware that breathing is going on. Acknowledge it. Do not control your breath. Let the breathing happen naturally. If it's a short breath, it's a short breath. If it's a long breath, it's a long breath. There is no need to control it. Feel that you are sitting by the shores of the ocean. The waves are coming by itself, and the waves slowly go back into the ocean. Similarly, the breath, symbolizing these waves, come by itself and they go back by itself. The breathing happens naturally. We don't have to control it. We don't have to make the inhalation come in, nor do we have to force the exhalation to go out. Now slowly bring your attention to the gap in between the breathing. Feel that when that gap comes, that you are also mentally tuning in to the deeper space of resting, where there's no activity, where there's complete stillness. Feel that in that gap between the inhalation and the exhalation, that there is a point of pause and rest where everything comes to a stop. Most people find it easier to connect to the gap in between the inhalation and exhalation. But some people find it easier to find the gap in between the exhalation and inhalation. Again, there's no need to force the gap. Don't make that gap happen. Let it happen naturally. Now, as I drop my arms on my thighs, please open your eyes and look slightly upwards. And just rest in awareness, alertness. Allow whatever sensory input to come in, but be present completely here and now. Acknowledge and note whatever things maybe you hear, smell, see, but don't get lost with that. Maintain your awareness, maintain your alertness. And now, again, go back to watching the breath. You can close your eyes. And just for a couple of minutes, make an effort to now try to see. You will actually notice that your ability to focus will increase. You can actually focus now on the inhalation and the exhalation. And maybe you might also be able to catch the gap. Now, one last time, as I drop my arms, open your eyes, look up. Be completely alert, present, resting. Maintain your awareness. You might also notice that the quality of your awareness this time might have increased. Okay, you can close your eyes for a moment and say a prayer of gratitude. Rub your arms and wipe your face if you like. Just energizing back your senses. So between today and tomorrow, you can try this also at your own time. Give it a little more time to practice it. It is actually scientifically proven that the more you're able to give certain amounts of rest to the mind, the ability of concentration actually increases. So this is the whole philosophy between weekends and also how humans are naturally tuned in to give that kind of gap in their activities. So, however, we have to be careful that we are using that gap rightly. That it's not just just getting lost with that. That is not that rest that we are talking about in meditation. You're using another quality of the mind, which is what I call as awareness, and that is different from what is called as concentration or focus. So that actually helps us to deepen the concentration. And there are certain neurological responses that has been scientifically proven actually increases. So we can actually use this, as I mentioned earlier, too, for all those who are even devotionally inclined. That it is said that most of the deep spiritual experiences or visions that has come to people has actually come in that point when they have actually been able to drop that complete focus or rest in that. At the same time, scientists have discovered a lot when they have actually paused or taken that kind of break. So, but we have to use it rightly again, and I have want to emphasize that point one more time. So, thank you, namaste, and I would also like to suggest that if any of you have any questions, you can write to me either in the chat or on my messages. You can send me direct messages. Um, Maybe on the seventh session, I will actually try and address some of them. And tomorrow's session, again, will be on the focusing on the other aspect of the mind, what I call as intellect for working with contemplation. Thank you. Namaste.